I'm living testimony and I'm proof of what God can do for anybody.
Hello, I'm Pastor Daniel from the Promise Church of Houston, and joining me today for Throwback Thursday, which is our Testimony Thursday, is Daniel Torres. Welcome, brother.
Thank you for having me, Pastor.
So it's good to have you here because today you are really representative of our church in a way that maybe some others aren't, because you kind of were raised in this neighborhood, in and around this area, and still have a lot of family and connections over here. And now God has brought you back to the Promised Church, or back to this neighborhood in the Promised Church, but it's been quite a long journey.
Yes, it has.
So where does your journey start, both in coming to God and just, for your life and your upbringing?
Well, Pastor, actually I grew up in a lot of areas in Houston, but we never had a home. We never had I grew up with my mom. I'm my mom's only son, and my mom and my father divorced when I was a baby. So I lived basically with my mother. My grandfather, Torres, he would come from Denver Harbor to the East End, and he would come pick me up. And I always tell everybody this: I wasn't saved, I wasn't serving God, but he still loved me, and he always came to look for me. And he would come and tell me, "I'm going to come pick you up, and I'm going to take you to church." I said, "Oh, I don't want to go to church," but I love my grandfather. And I didn't. Church was long, I was young. I wanted to be with my friends, I always had activities. But he would come, and out of respect and love for my grandfather, I would go to church with him. And I moved around a lot. I went to a lot of schools. And people ask me, why did you go to so many schools? Were you a troublemaker? I said, no, I wasn't a troublemaker, but when my mom said we had to move, we had to move. And there's times I would get comfortable with the school, and she would tell me, I'm checking you out tomorrow. I said, no, I don't want to move. I'm playing ball here. I'm starting to have friends. She says, well, we have to. We don't have any choice. So I'm checking you out.
So these were real schools. You're not juvenile detention centers. You are.
No, these are real
schools.
Yeah, I went to Austin High School. I went to Fur High School there, and then I moved to Edna, Texas, and I went to Edna High School. I moved back from Edna, and I went to Baytown Sterling for a while. And then I ended up graduating from Fur, but I remember going up to her and saying, "Mom, I'm graduating. I'm graduating this in 2 weeks." My mom said, "You gonna graduate from what?" I said, "I'm graduating from high school." I said, "Well, not only am I graduating, but I got a full scholarship." And she was like, "Well, what did you get a scholarship for?" And she thought maybe football or baseball, but I got a scholarship in theater and drama. I did a lot of acting and dramas in high school, and along the way, we never had anything, but I was always wanting to do things. So I played football. I was involved a lot in the school. Every school that I went to, I had to prove myself to every school because it was tough, going to a school and they have their program set, and I just kind of had to find my way and prove myself, which was difficult at times, but I met a lot of people. I still keep contact with people that I would always say God brought them in my lives to. I have some friends that were my mentors that helped me along the way, and were a big part of my life. And I thank God that He put them in my life. I never take back where I came from, because when I ride around here, I see the houses I used to live in with my mom, the apartments off the wayside, and I look at where God took me and where God has me now, and I'm so humbled and I'm grateful that I always say I lived in San Antonio, I lived in Victoria, Texas, but somehow God brought me back to the Promised Church in the neighborhood of Magnolia here, and here I am, and I'm proud, and I'm so happy to be serving God. a journey that God brought me to. I never thought I'd be here, but I'm grateful, and I know that it was God's timing and His plan.
No, that's amazing what the Lord has done. Tell me, so growing up, apparently your parents separate when you're a kid. How old are you when that happens, and is that a part that caused you on part of your journey here?
Yeah, I was a baby. I mean, I was a baby when they divorced, so I never saw my dad and my mom together. I didn't like my dad for a long time. There's a lot of things going in school. I wanted to do a lot, but I couldn't because there was no money. My mom was in an abusive relationship after my father. I saw a lot of violence in that relationship. And the one person that I took it out in my heart was my father. Because I always say, man, he can't even come rescue me from this. I'm trying to do good. I'm not a bad guy. But I used to hate him for a long time. And I just know now that if I could turn back the hands of time, I would have forgave him then, and it would have saved me a lot of, because hate does a lot of bad things to you. And there's decisions that I made that end up, changing my life, but it was because of the hate that I had for my father. Everything was his fault. Everything that happened bad to me was his fault. I blame him for everything.
Now, I know your dad, and I'm sure he would change things if he could go back in the past too, because he's a good man.
Yes.
But your dad was the one that had a connection with church.
That's right.
Because the grandfather you're talking about, that's your dad's dad.
That's my dad's dad, yes.
And so, how was your feelings towards church? If you were hating your father, what did you feel about the things of God?
I used to be bitter and hateful and thought, but I think that because of those situations that I always say this, that when God knew that when I would come to the Lord, I'm kind of not glad, but I'm thankful that I did go through that, because my relationship with God now is so much. It's like it's so beautiful, and I contribute that to everything that I had to learn from growing up. I forgave my dad. I've forgiven him. I love my father. I call him daily. But if I could have skipped everything that we did because of me, I would have. But I don't think my relationship with God would be where it's at now if I didn't go through what I did.
Well, surely there's a lot of hurt there. There's probably a lot of people that are watching right now that the reason that they're not in church or not in relationship with God is because of hurt and anger with their parents, especially hurt and anger with parents that were in church. Divorce causes a lot of pain, a lot of hurt in families. How would you address that?
There's things that I felt hurt about because I didn't grow up with a family who was your traditional, all-American or church family. My parents, none of my life was like that. And I used to get bitter again about it and think I couldn't fit in the church. I couldn't serve God. There's things that I couldn't do because I don't follow the mold of what I used to believe that God would want from me. And I used to tell myself that, how am I going to serve God if I'm not from a traditional family? Or, how am I going to make an impact on people's lives for the Lord if I'm not from that mold? And I've always been that way. And my mom told me one time, I'd always tell her, Mom, I'm just too different. And she said, that be thankful to the Lord that you are different, because He made you different than a lot of people. Because He made you in a special way that one day that you would have your own story to talk about. You'd have your own testimony. You'd have your own different way that you're going to reach people that God is going to use you. It's not going to be like everybody else's. So one day you're going to realize that, and now I understand what she means because I have my own testimonies. I have my own stories that I believe that God needs me to share, that He wants me to share, and to reach people that were like me, bitter with their parents, bitter with the church. It's either the church fault, it's the parents' fault, and I grew up like that, and now it's not like that, and I believe that God is using me to reach out to that generation or to that motive, that type where I came from, and to let them know that the church is a beautiful place.
Your mom wasn't perfect, but she stuck by you your entire childhood. Your dad wasn't there with you growing up, but he's really active in your life now. And it's wonderful to see how you have a good relationship with both your parents and how God has brought you into relationship with them, and your kids know their grandparents.
That's right.
And they have a relationship with their grandparents, and you get to provide for your family what you felt you missed out. God's really gracious.
Yes, He is, Pastor.
Now, in your life, so you're growing up, kind of just wandering, literally, you're wandering, family to family, home to home, city to city. Then you become an adult, and things don't go exactly like you planned, but you have some beautiful gifts from those times before you really come to God. Two of those blessings being your twin boys. How was that for you, becoming a dad, and this is before you're having your strong walk with God. What's going on in your life at that time?
Well, at that time, I did have twin boys that they're 17 now, but at the time I was in a relationship that didn't work. I knew that I would not have my sons with me every day, and I tried so hard, and for whatever, it didn't work out. And I remember going to the Attorney General saying, I want to be a part of my son's life, and I did everything I could, and it was a hard part of my life to have them not with me every day, and I started drinking a lot, and my life was literally out of order. There was nothing that I had nothing. I had a one-bedroom apartment. Actually, I lived. I would tell people, my mom lives with me, but I actually lived with her in a one-bedroom apartment, and everything was just upside down. Everything was just in chaos, and I would hurt for them because I couldn't see them. They were infants, and I didn't want anybody. I didn't know who would take care of my kids, my sons, and when I used to pick them up on the weekends, I would have their bags, and I would have 2 car seats, 2 bags of everything. I never even changed a pamper before, and I would pick them up, and I would have these 2 babies on my arms, thinking, okay, how am I going to do this? And I remember I would feed one, and I'd put one in the bouncer, and I'd rock them on the bouncer, and I'd feed the other one like this. And there were things that I started, doing that I said, well, I'm not too bad, but there was always that time where I had to drop them off on the weekends, on the Sunday. And they would cry, and I would put their pacifiers in their mouth, and I would see them drive off, and it used to be so hard for me to let them go like that. And the only way that I found comfort was through a bottle. I would drink a lot, and I would kind of drink my sorrows, and then think about my life, and I started drinking every day, and everything in my life was chaos. And I remember it was about 3 a.m. I used to take them to this little park, and I would go to that park at about 3 or 4 in the morning, and I would just be drunk, and I would sit there crying, thinking about when they were on the little swing there, and I would just give myself this whole sad, you know. But the bottle, I mean, I always say that when you drink so much, you know, you either happy, excited, but that happy and excited, it always turns to sadness. And I would cry in a park, and I'd be all dressed up and thinking, you know, I could get robbed. Never thought about it because I was drunk, but you know, there came a point where I just said, you know, Lord, you know, I don't want my life to be this way. You know, I used to always say, you know, I don't want my sons to grow up thinking what kind of car I have. You know, I have this nice car. You know, I'm talking to all these ladies, and you know, my dad's the man. You know, he talks to, you know, all the, you know, I didn't want to be that way. And you know, being somebody who never had a home, I never had like credit, or I didn't have anything. I didn't grow up like that. And I always said, Lord, you know, I don't want to be like that. And, you know, I didn't want to drink anymore. And when my mom used to read scriptures to me, and my grandfather, they would always tell me, you know, when you come to the Lord, that you're basically going to die. And I never understood that. My mom would tell me, you know, you're going to die in the flesh, and you're going to be born again. And it's no longer you're going to live, but Christ lives in you. And I used to always say, well, I don't know if I can do that. I mean, that's really serious. I don't think I can do that. That's just it's too much for me. But one day I said, Lord, you know, the one thing I want to do right in my life is serve you. And I want to do it like I've never done anything in my life before. I remember going to my uncle and calling him. It was about maybe 7 in the morning. My uncle's a pastor, and I remember calling him, and I smelled like alcohol, and I remember he met with me, and I told him, I said, I really want to get baptized. And, you know, he said, well, I'll baptize you. From that moment on, I knew that my life was going to change.
So Pastor Alfred was a really good friend of mine. So he comes into your life and takes you under his wing there, brings you into his church.
He prepared him in my life for that to happen. I remember the morning I got baptized, I cried and cried because I thought, okay, it's going to be a funeral day, that I'm literally going to die, you know, and I didn't want to play with the Lord, you know. I knew that this was something that I knew that it had to happen, and I remember coming above the water, and I knew from that moment on that everything in my life would change. And I remember somebody spoke into my life and said, get ready, because not only are things going to change, but you're going to lose relationships. You're going to lose people in your life that you love a lot. And I didn't understand back then, because I knew that when that person spoke into my life, I knew that the relationships that were going to be hindered because of everything that I was about to, that God was about to change.
I've known you since then. I didn't know you before you were baptized. I've known you since you were baptized and since the Torres poured into you. And I've always known you as a Christian brother. So you're telling us this story about, you know, your battle with alcohol, maybe some depression in there, some brokenness in there. And when I meet you, you're like this great Christian brother. And maybe it's because you had a good pastor, Pastor Alfred Torres. Maybe it's because you had good support from your dad, who goes to church with Brother Torres. And maybe it's because while you're losing all of those relationships, God's about to bless you with the best relationship you've ever had outside of Jesus.
Yes.
And He brings you a wife. Tell us about that.
That's a big part of this, of my journey. I remember when I met my wife, it was, you know, my wife has been serving the Lord her whole life. She's been in God her whole life. And here I am, you know, I had been serving God for a little over a year and a half. And you know, I was a baby in Christ. And when I met her, it was tough because there were things that I didn't understand at the time about my wife, and I was used to people in my life saying, do whatever you want to do. God's gonna love you. You can do whatever you want to do. Free everything. My wife cared about what I did, especially the things of God. And it was hard at first, but I knew that she was sick from God because she cared about my prayer life. She would call me and ask me, where are you at? Everybody's looking for you. You remember you got people counting on you. God's watching you. Have you read your Bible? What's going on? And she would just stay on me and stay on me. And now I'm so grateful that my wife chose to marry me because everything that in my walk now, she's a big reason, a huge reason in my life when it comes to the things of the Lord. And I'm so grateful that God gave it to me.
You can tell that God made y'all for each other. The jasmine fits perfectly into what you needed in life. Here you go from a little boy who can't find his place to now you're living for God. You've been baptized in Jesus' name. You have His Holy Spirit. You have an amazing wife. You have your twins. You have a stepdaughter who's an amazing girl. You have Naya's born to you. Luke's born to you. Micah's born to you. And you have a family. And everything is looking roses. You're in the promised land of milk and honey. Then something happens that shakes your family to the core. Share with us what happens that just, kind of pulls the rug out of your life right now.
He was such a blessing and surprise to us. When Michael was still an infant, he had a little ball here on the side of his stomach. And my wife and her father came to the house and he noticed it and he said, "Listen, we need to take him into the emergency room." So I remember I took him to the ER. It was just me and him. And I remember he was on the bed there. And they did an ultrasound on him, and it was the scariest day of my life. Growing up, I wasn't in any gangs. I was involved in school, but there were situations that I was put in. You're always with somebody, and you're in the wrong situation at the wrong time. There was times where I seen my mom get basically beat up sometimes, and I seen her hard life, my bout with alcohol. Everything in my life, my relationship that was sour with my dad, everything in my life that I thought was hard compared to nothing when the doctor came and said your baby has cancer.
Now you work at MD Anderson.
Yeah, I've been with MD Anderson for 19 years. So
you know about cancer.
Yeah, and not only that, but I worked 7 years at Texas Children's Hospital, which they transferred him from the hospital that he was at to Texas Children's. So I remember calling my wife, and I told her the news. I told her, you have to get to the hospital right away. We were both devastated. I remember my hands, I was sweating. I was so scared. I didn't understand. But when they put him in the ambulance, my wife got there. They put him in the ambulance to transfer us to Texas Children's Hospital. I remember my wife going in the ambulance, and I was following the ambulance. And I remember in the car, I remember screaming at God driving behind the ambulance. And I yelled with everything I had, I yelled at him. And I said, God, I changed my life 6 years ago. I didn't have one sip of alcohol in 6 years at that time. I got baptized. I was serving. I was ministering in the church. I was speaking to people. Everything that I was doing, I yelled at the top of my lungs to God and said, 6 years ago, I wouldn't ask you for anything. But I'm asking you now, I need you to heal my son. I need a miracle now. And I was yelling, and I was crying, and I was pleading with him. And I remember getting to the hospital from the emergency room. We went through the doors of the ER, and I remember there was a guy there, a nurse, who shouted my name. He said, "Hey, Dan!" And I remember looking at him. He said, "What are you doing here?" And he's a nurse at Texas Children's. And he said, "Hey, man, you know what? We're going to take care of you, man. Don't worry." And that was God telling me, "I got you." You know, it started from the day we walked in that ER. They catered to us. They put my son in the room. There was a doctor that came in and told us that he was going to have his CT scans. They were going to do a workup on him the following morning. And I said, "Well, why are we going to wait till the morning? You know, we need to do it now." And for whatever reason, you know, they couldn't do it. But I remember when the doctor left, there was a female doctor that walked in, and I seen her. I remember her from the commercials on the TV. She does a lot of Texas Children commercials. And I told my wife, I said, she's on the TV. I mean, she does all the commercials, you know. And my wife, we were shocked, and she said, "I'm taking over right now." So God was already preparing things. He was already maneuvering things in my eyes.
So what was the diagnosis? What did they say Micah had?
He had a Wilms tumor on his kidney.
Explain to us what that is.
Actually, it's a kidney cancer that develops in infants.
And that cancer, is that a deadly cancer?
Well, you know, just like all cancers, there are different stages. You know, in my mind, I was thinking already, okay, you know, stage 4, stage 3, what stage is the cancer at? And
orange-sized cancer is pretty big.
Yeah, it's pretty big. So
especially for the baby.
So that's, in my mind, I'm already, I always say that situation that when we went through that, it shook everything in my life. My faith was shaking. I couldn't fix anything. You know, I'm used to being able to fix things with my hands. You know, I couldn't change that situation I was in. I knew that the only thing, and my wife was a big part of this, but the only thing that we had was God.
You've shared with me that you went through a really dark place spiritually, emotionally, mentally, with Micah's cancer. To the point that you almost threw in the towel a few times. But even in those times when you were about to give up, God was still reaching out to you. And you used one of our good friends, Brother Lopez.
Oh, yes.
Tell us about how those times, because people need to see that, you know, you weren't walking through this like if you were Moses and you had all the faith in the world, but you were human like the rest of us. And you had doubts, and there were times that you thought about just giving up.
Yeah, there's a brother minister at my uncle's church. His name is, we know him as Brother Lopez. A beautiful man, beautiful spirit, kind. And he has this thing about him that whenever I see him, he's known for these hugs, these massive hugs. And he'd always grab me and he'd hug me, and he has this thing where he rubbed my back. And that was Brother Lopez. He just was he's such a loving man. And I remember I said, I can't do this. I can't. This is too hard. And I remember getting in the car and I said, Lord, I was crying. I said, Lord, I can't take it no more. I need a drink. And I remember I was driving to a liquor store. I was already baptized. I was serving God. And I was so tired and weary. And I said, I can't do it. I'm tired of being perfect. I can't do it. You know, everything that I was going through at the time, I said, I need a drink. You know, I need a drink. I can't take it. And I remember driving to the liquor store, and I remember sitting outside, and I said, Lord, if you're gonna, I need you to save me tonight. I need you to save me. And I remember pleading to him, Lord, I don't know what you're gonna do, but I'm gonna walk in this liquor store and I'm gonna get my bottle, and I need your help. And I remember walking, and I heard somebody say, "Brother," and I looked around, and luckily there was a Kroger next door. But when I saw the brother, he said, "Brother," and I looked, and sure enough, it was Brother Lopez. And that was just to me the most strangest thing. And he came to me, and he had that hug, and he grabbed me, and he hugged me, and he did his little, he rubbed me on my back, and it was a hug that I don't think he'll ever know. To this day, I don't think he'll ever understand what that moment in my life meant. And to have that hug from him was a confirmation to me that he's always there. And I remember he hugged me, and it was like everything in me just kind of went away. Months down the road, I was going through the same situation, and I said, you know what, I'm going to fall. I can't do this. I remember going to the bank at the time, and I was going to drink that day. I said, you know what, I can't do it. I'm going to fall. I said, Lord, here I am again. I'm going to fail you. I can't do it. Well, when I got to the bank, I heard a voice say, "Brother," and I looked, and I said, no way. It was Brother Lopez. And he came, and he did that same hug, and I thought to myself, what a coincidence. Is this? I said, no, it's not a coincidence. This is God. This is literally the power of God in my life. And he hugged me, and I remember he talked to me, and once again that day I said, Lord, forgive me for the thought, forgive me for what I was going to do, and thank you for saving me the way you did. Well, fast forward to my son, when the day that he was going to have surgery, he was going to have an 8-hour scheduled surgery. They decided to remove his kidney. They didn't want to do a biopsy on the tumor because they didn't know what type of tumor it was. If they did a biopsy, it could have been necrotic, or they were scared that it could spread. So the doctor said, we just decided to go ahead and remove his kidney, just to be safe. So we agreed, and we took him in for surgery. And I remember holding Micah, and they were, in the triage area before they were taking him to the OR. And I remember I had him in my arms, and I told my wife, I said, I told her I can't do it. I can't let him go. I can't let him go. I didn't want to let him go. And I thought he's too small to have surgery to last that long. He's too small. He's not good. I want it to go away. I can't do it. I'd rather just have him and hold him than let him go. I don't want to do it. Through the whole process of his cancer, she would always tell me, you can't give up on the Lord. You can't give up on God. You gotta have faith. You gotta stand on His word. You got to have faith. Anesthesiologist came from the back, and there was a team there ready to take him in. And I said, I don't want to give him to you. I remember telling the doctors I don't want to give him away. I wasn't going to let him go. And my wife, she said, man, we have to let him go. You got to pray. And I remember asking God again. I said, Lord, I need you to save me today. I need you to save me. And as soon as I said that, I heard the voice say, brother. And I remember turning around, and it was Brother Lopez in the hospital. At the right time, he walked back there with his wife. And I looked up at God, and Brother Lopez gave me this big hug again. He rubbed my back like he always does. And I thought to myself that time, I said, Lord, I know you're here. I know you're here. And Brother Lopez had a word for me. He said, brother, I got a word for you today. And he talked about Moses and his mom when she released him in the water. He said, right now, you're going to release Micah. And when she released Moses in the water, we don't know the dangers that he faced. There could have been alligators, there could have been any dangers in the water. But he asked me, what did he become? And when he told me that, I remember releasing my son to the water and relying on my faith that God has plans for him. And it's beyond what I could ever imagine. And finally, when they called us, I remember his doctor calling us to the consultation area. And he said, I have great news. He said, the surgery went well. We removed Micah's kidney. But when we saw the kidney, the tumor that was on the kidney was encapsulated. It was contained.
God really showed up and walked you and Jasmine all throughout the entire ordeal, which was like passing through a fiery furnace. And God was with you in that fire. It's been 6 years. You've never stopped living for God. In fact, you're doing things for God. What are you doing for God now? What's the Lord calling you to do?
Since I've done a lot of acting and plays, and I've written a lot of skits and plays about my life, and basically put it to where I can share it as a drama. And right now we're working on several. We just put one out, a video with me and Micah, and then we have several other plays that here at the Promisers that we're going to release and start working on additional ones. We just finished the Second Chance, which was awesome. But I just believe that that's part of my ministry, to where I believe that God uses this to reach out to the lost and to start winning souls, and use my testimony in my life. What the devil thought that he was going to destroy me with, it's only going to bring people to God. I believe that in my heart.
One of the highlights in our 16 years here at the Promise Church was the Father's Day that you brought your one-man play, the I Remember play, and brought it here. And even my daughters, and it's been a few years back since we've done that one here, even my girls remember, as we were talking about the other day, and they're like, oh, the one where he's talking to the bottle? I'm like, yeah, that one. So they were mad that we didn't do it this year. But God is using a talent that maybe you thought was buried. And God is uncovering something and saying, I still want to use this. And God is getting to use your creative art in the area of drama and acting and producing and directing. And some great things are coming up. And God has certainly brought you a long way. You're one of the friendliest persons I've ever met in my life. And I'm glad that you're my friend. And my brother, I love you. I love your family and what God is doing. And like Brother Kilgore would always tell me, the best is yet to come. And I feel that that's your story. The best is yet to come. One day we're going to need to re-interview you because of what God's going to do in the next few years in your life. Thank you for being here. And stay tuned for videos and plays coming up real soon, and see what God is doing through the life and ministry of Brother Daniel Torres. God bless you in Jesus' name.